So here we are to talk about a Colorado framework for hazard mitigation. And this goes back to non-structural measures, right? That's what we're here to talk about. The previous speaker just talked about using tools at your disposal. And there's a wonderful hip-hop band in Colorado called the Flobots. Anybody heard of them? Yeah! F-L-O-B-O-T-S, Flobots, right? Okay, so they've got an album they cut in 2008 called Fight with Tools. And in there, they have a song or a story they tell, and this is how it starts. We still don't understand thunder and lightning, flashback to when we didn't fund the dam, didn't fund the dang levee. No wonder, man, now our whole dang city's torn asunder, man. Underwater, but we still don't understand. We see hurricane spills overrun the land through gaps he couldn't fill with 100 tons of sand. No, we still don't understand. That's a message to us. These people in this band who entertain people for a living don't do what we do for a living, and yet they get it. They realize we can't build stuff all the time to protect ourselves from ourselves and from natural hazards. So that's what I'm here to talk to you about. But first, before I do that, I want to introduce you to my home. Welcome to colorful Colorado. This is where I live. Not here specifically, but this is where I live. And this is also where I live, which is the highest point in Colorado. Well, I was getting to the highest point in Colorado, which, by the way, Washington, we have 3 peaks higher than Mount Rainier. So we'll throw down later on that one, okay? I know Pierce County's in here somewhere. They're going to catch me. But we also live here, and here, and here. This is real life. And this is real life. Let's talk about natural hazards. In Colorado, the link between wildfire and flooding is very clear. And the damage from flooding is also very clear. Because flooding clears the land for you to see the gaps in your understanding. Talk to me about 100 tons of sand. We're putting 100 tons of riprap in this river right now, structural measures. So let's make the case for non-structural measures. In 2010, according to Business Week, national disaster damages totaled $9.8 billion. That's not a lot in today's dollars because we're seeing those numbers go way up year over year. Notice something at the top of the list. Flooding, out of all the natural hazards, accounted for more than half of all the damages in the United States. And being a hydraulic engineer, I like to tell people the wonderful thing about water is it's a very predictable compound. Here's the formula for damage. You ready for this? Write this down. It's real simple. Water plus gravity plus human decisions create flood damage. Which one of those do we control? Here's a hint. It's not gravity. And it turns out it's not water. We've tried that. That's what structural measures are about. So let's talk about non-structural. And let's keep making that case. Here's a plot. Again, a lot of this information was provided to me from Ian Hyde in the governor's office, so I don't totally understand everything, but you, like me, can look at this graph and see that over time, things are changing. And we know that. The environment around us is changing, and the population is increasing. So if we see a change in potential damages and we also see a change in the potential for the number of people to be damaged, we suddenly have a lot of work for us. And we know that the lens to the past provides us an idea of what's coming in the future. In the 60s, in the 70s, in the early 2000s, we saw all kinds of floods, droughts, fires, more floods, and on we go. This is a cycle, ladies and gentlemen. This is a very predictable cycle. And in a state, the rectangular shape of Colorado, where the majority of people live in the red area shown in here, when you have 4 wildfires in just a few years that damage or destroy, in this case, almost 1,500 homes, you have a crisis. And this is what your public infrastructure looks like. And this is what your watersheds look like. The view on the right is standing underneath what used to be a walkout basement. If you want to know where the bottom of the first level was, look up. Do you see that post hanging right above my head? That was once the first floor of that home. The home behind me was entirely destroyed except for the garage door and the facade around the garage. Everything else was gone. And to this day, 4 years later, those homeowners still pay a mortgage on that home that does not exist. They didn't have flood insurance because they weren't in a floodplain. So they thought. This is what damage looks like. And this is what damage looks like by the numbers. From 2012 to 2015 in the state of Colorado, we had over $5 billion of damage to infrastructure, housing, and watersheds from both floods and wildfires, just floods and wildfires. That doesn't include debris hazards. That doesn't necessarily include other hazards like major landslides, avalanches, acts of human disaster. We've had $1.7 billion just to cover that $5 million in recovery. Ladies and gentlemen, these numbers don't add up. The bottom line is if you are damaged, it will cost you more to repair than it would have to mitigate. Larry Larson likes to say, for every dollar of mitigation invested, you get $4 return. Let's talk about non-structural measures. Chris Sturm of the Water Conservation Board in Colorado in 2013 asked the question, if you could do it all over again, would you do it the same way? Probably not, if you've suffered one of these disasters. So Colorado asked that same question of itself, and here's what we came up with. We started with a plan, the Resiliency Framework, and the framework is essentially the integration of many departments and other NGOs and public sector stakeholders and private sector folks and people who live and do business in Colorado. Look at all the agencies, state and federal. Look at the academics that are involved in here. We're taking all of this information, this knowledge, this experience, and putting it into one group and saying, if we were to do it differently next time, what would it look like? And here's one of the tools that comes out of it. Ready to start fighting with tools? Here they come. Write them down. We came up with a plan. One of the plans that we've sent out is the Community Planning Assistance, Planning for Hazards, Land Use Solutions for Colorado Guide. This is both online, in an interactive format, and in a paper format for those of you who still like to have a very thick manual spiral bound on your library, your physical library. It gives you guidance on finding and identifying risk and hazards that you may need to think about. It gives you a set of land use tools to help you mitigate human misery before that misery arrives to you. And it's adaptable, it's flexible, it's intended to be used outside of Colorado because our intent when we helped put this together, both from steering committee and from the private sector who helped invest their time into putting this document together, we realized this isn't just for Colorado, this is for everybody. So the more of you that use this, give us feedback, the better this document becomes for you and for us, and it's available online. Another tool that we've been using in our toolbox is the Resiliency Index prioritization level, and this is at the Department of Transportation. Fair warning, a bunch of DOT engineers love to build stuff and say, yeah, man, we built that, and we built that, and we built this thing over here. That's pretty cool, right? Well, they like structural measures because that's what they get paid to do. But non-structural measures require us to figure out if we're going to spend your public dollars on things on the ground, let's be very deliberate about this. So our non-structural technique to do that is to put together the Resiliency Index and then to color code it green, yellow, red. We're trying to build capacity to help foster this culture of resilience from the framework and from these tools to help communities take control of the hazards in their communities to say, if we're aware of these, now what do we do? What now should we do with these tools? We're leveraging information. We're leveraging people. We're leveraging resources from out of state and from in-state. And we're trying to put all of these together to turn these into capital investments that are going to pay out dividends. So again, for every dollar that we invest, we get at least 4 out of it in avoided losses and damages. The state Senate was also proactive. They said, you know what? We don't have time to wait. Let's take control of our own destiny and kickstart this recovery effort. One of those was Senate Bill 15245, which is a 3-year program of remapping hazards in and around Colorado, flood hazards, debris hazards, fluvial geomorphologic hazards. If anybody says fluvial geomorphology after this conversation, they can use it in a sentence, you get a free high five from me right here. High five. High five. We're digitizing 28 counties worth of information. We're leveraging these dollars from our state taxpayers to help find resources from other places, local, federal. We're getting donations. It's pretty impressive what people can do with a little bit of seed money. We're showing what erosion zones look like, and we're not starting from scratch. We're borrowing technology from the city of Austin, from the state of New Mexico, from the state of Washington, and also from the state of Vermont, because all of them had disasters before us, and we're not trying to recreate the wheel. We're not trying to relearn from our own history. We're trying to build on the foundations of the lessons learned from the history of you all, so that we can be as resilient as we can possibly be now. And then we're going to share that out. In 2013, we had a disaster. In 2014, Texas had a disaster. And as soon as Jessica Baker from TFMA came and said, "Who do I talk to?" I texted Ian Hyde from the governor's office. The two of them went off and spoke to Governor Rick Perry about how to recover quickly, resiliently, and better in the future. This is how we share this information. These are tools at your disposal. And all of this requires action on the ground. This is another tool for non-structural mitigation, and that's partnering. There is no power stronger than the human will. How many times have you seen people during a storm and after a storm stand up in front of the media and say, "We will rebuild"? What they're saying is, we will not let this define who we are. What they're saying without realizing it is, we don't learn from our past. That's not their intent. Their intent is to say, we've been damaged, we will recover because that's who we are. Estes Park said, we're mountain strong. They said, we live here, we love this place, we live with nature, we don't fight it, we're with it, not against it. That's another tool in your toolbox for non-structural mitigation. And it leads to what you see at the bottom, partnering, community change, and community enhancement. How am I doing on time? One of the things that we also had to do was look at the science, right? All right, science. Hashtag science. Hashtag facts matter, right? This is what I get paid to do. Professional engineer. I'm going to admit that to you all. I am an engineer, and I think like one sometimes too. So one of the things we realized, the Colorado Department of Transportation, is we had to get partners, just like I said in the previous slide. So we partnered with the Water Conservation Board, and we looked at all of the watersheds in a 2,000 plus square mile area that had received this disaster from 2013 and said, let's reevaluate the hydrology, which hasn't been looked at in some cases for up to 40 years. It's time to reevaluate our own numbers, because this information goes into risk education and communication. It goes into mapping efforts to show that risk to the public. And it goes into regulating within those zones. So we need all the data we can get, rainfall. We need bucket surveys. We need radar information. We need to know what the high water marks were and how those translate into real data. And then we take all that information and turn it into local engagement and application. We turn it into on-the-ground standards, criteria, and regulations that help improve people's lives. What is the mission of ASFPM? It's to protect people, both lives, safety and welfare, and property from flood risks. That's the mission. When you read ASFPM's mission statement, it's all about health, safety, welfare, and property protection from hazards, flood hazards largely. So we take all this information, put it into a framework, plug it into the hydrology, the science, the hydraulics, which become the floodplain maps, and then we use those floodplain maps to help people mitigate their own misery prior to that misery coming to them. I've been flooded 3 times in my lifetime before I was 21 years old. I have never lived in a special flood hazard area. If you don't think this can happen to you, I would like to introduce you to our colleague from New Jersey. Because when this happens to you, it becomes very real. And when the applicants come to you, they're out of time, they're out of money, they're out of emotional energy. They're exhausted, and they need your help and your empathy. Let's see if we can mitigate that before they have to come to you. So put together some tools. And this is my favorite. This is the part where I get to geek out. Okay, this is the good times. This is the part I enjoyed doing last night, throwing this together. Leverage technology. You have technology at your disposal. Remember this phone? Go Broncos. Are we getting that on there? I know this is Chiefs country. This is why I got to do this. I got to do this. This little device that sits in most of your back pockets. No comments from the audience. Thank you. This little device right here has the capability to help you track information and put it in a digital format that can be rapidly archived and used to disseminate information out. There's a lot of power in a 6-hour battery that is at your disposal. There are other details that you can look at too. You can leverage new technology in GIS and in 2D hydraulic modeling technology. Unfortunately, the regulations have not kept up with the technology. I'm here to tell you today, this is an extremely powerful tool. I've been using this since 1999 myself. And what this allows you to do is to take your basic hydraulic information, make it more granular, and make it more real. If I talk to somebody about a BFE, they might understand that. If I talk to them about their ground survey, they might understand that and figure out the math in between. Why don't I just cut to the chase and tell them what the depth is around their property or around their structure? I can take these models and draw an arc around the exact framework of a building and show them a depth profile at every point around that building as granular as I want to make it. And I can create a heat map that shows the potential shear stress. All right, here it is, PE's in the room. What is shear stress? My director asks me this all the time. I tell him it's essentially a measure of the potential erosion that can occur in a natural stream. See these hot spots? I'm moving my bridge at the Colorado Department of Transportation north a little bit, so we go from existing to proposed, remove those hot spots so that river stops eating its own channel away on the north bank and discontinues that retreat from its historic alignment. Here's another heat map prepared by one of my contractors. These folks put together a map that basically allows them to calculate the needed riprap size to put in place to protect US Highway 34 between Loveland and Estes Park from getting washed out again in the next flood. It was wiped out in 1976. It was wiped out in 2013. Here's hoping, fingers crossed, doesn't happen again. That's my job. Use this technology at your disposal. And this is never a one and done deal. You never get to walk away from this and say, congratulations, we've arrived, high five, I'm out. That's called retirement. None of us ever fully retire from this industry. Agreed? I want to leave you with one thought. I left you tools. I've left you ideas. Sir Winston Churchill once said, however beautiful the strategy, you should occasionally look at the results. We plan to monitor results, and we plan to come back here. And I plan to debrief with the governor's office after this presentation's over to see how we're doing. But the bottom line is the work hasn't even started yet. Can't say it's finished, can't say it's going to be finished. We have a lot of work yet to do. If you're looking for a new career, non-structural mitigation is a great one to pick. And that's the last thought I want to leave you with. Before I do that, you all who know me know that my dog always ends up in presentation. This is the last presentation she will end up in. We lost her this year. We miss her. Thank you.